The G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta, was meant to foster unity, bringing together the world's most powerful democracies to address urgent global challenges. Leaders from across Europe, North America, and Japan gathered in the scenic Canadian Rockies, hoping to find common ground on issues ranging from climate change to economic stability. But on June 16, 2025, the summit was thrown into chaos by President Trump's abrupt and unexpected early departure. The news rippled through the venue, catching both journalists and diplomats off guard, and sparking a flurry of urgent discussions behind closed doors. Trump left before crucial meetings on Ukraine and global trade, citing a sudden Middle East crisis that, according to the White House, demanded his immediate return to Washington. His departure was swift, with Air Force One lifting off as stunned onlookers tried to process the implications. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the summit's host, stepped forward to address the media. He tried to project calm and reassurance, emphasizing the importance of continued dialogue. Yet the strain was clear in his voice and on his face as he fielded tough questions about the summit's future. Trump's exit was more than just a scheduling disruption. It was a stark symbol of America's growing distance from its traditional allies. The absence of the U.S. president at the table sent shockwaves through the diplomatic community, raising doubts about America's commitment to multilateral cooperation. His America First doctrine once again took precedence over collaboration, leaving the remaining leaders to grapple with a new and uncertain reality. Conversations shifted from policy to contingency, as leaders recalibrated their strategies in the absence of the United States. The summit's dynamic shifted instantly. The empty chair at the table, draped with the American flag, became a powerful symbol, one that represented not just a missing leader, but the uncertainty of future U.S. leadership on the world stage. In the end, the image that lingered was not one of unity, but of division. A G7 forced to confront a world where American leadership could no longer be assumed, and where the path forward was more uncertain than ever before. Even before the formal talks had a chance to begin, President Trump wasted no time in making his priorities unmistakably clear to the world and his fellow leaders. He arrived at the summit with a hardline stance on Iran, determined to push for sweeping new tariffs that would shake the foundations of global trade. Trump demanded that the G7 back his call for Iran's unconditional surrender, refusing to entertain any talk of compromise or de-escalation. His approach left little room for negotiation, and the tension in the room was palpable. On social media, he took matters into his own hands, issuing direct threats to Iran and escalating tensions even further. By bypassing traditional diplomatic channels, Trump signaled a new, more confrontational era in U.S. foreign policy. Trump's trade agenda was just as aggressive as his foreign policy. He unveiled a series of tariffs that stunned both allies and rivals alike. The new measures included 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and a hefty 25% on foreign cars, industries vital to many G7 economies. Most imports would face a 10% tariff, threatening to disrupt supply chains and raise prices for consumers around the world. Trump justified these sweeping measures as essential for American security, arguing that the era of free trade that had defined the G7 was over. He insisted that only a new protectionist approach could safeguard American jobs and industries. Canada, America's closest neighbor and trading partner, faced the threat of even higher tariffs. The U.S. cited border security as a pretext, straining relations further. The USMCA, which was supposed to guarantee stability, now offered little protection. Economic uncertainty soared, and businesses on both sides of the border braced for impact. Trump's demands, military support against Iran and acceptance of damaging tariffs, left his allies cornered, forced to choose between their own interests and maintaining unity. The G7 was now at a crossroads, forced to decide whether to stand together or capitulate to relentless U.S. pressure. For most leaders, Trump's package deal was simply unacceptable, a stark reminder of how quickly alliances can be tested in the face of uncompromising demands. Prime Minister Carney responded to Trump's demands with quiet but firm resistance. Canada refused to endorse Trump's aggressive Iran rhetoric, instead advocating diplomacy and multilateral pressure. Behind the scenes, Carney built consensus with European allies for a more moderate approach. On trade, Canada rejected the legitimacy of the new tariffs and prepared to retaliate if necessary. Carney agreed to further negotiations but refused to be bullied into violating trade agreements. His leadership was defined by calm resolve, rejecting U.S. ultimatums without public confrontation. Canada's stance underscored its commitment to international law and a rules-based order. Carney showed it was possible to disagree with the U.S. while maintaining diplomatic decorum. The summit unfolded under the shadow of a new Middle East war. Just days before, Israel had bombed Iranian nuclear sites, escalating a long-simmering conflict. Trump immediately sided with Israel, using social media to amplify the crisis and urge evacuations from Tehran. He framed the Israeli strikes as justified, demanding G7 support for a hardline response. The other leaders saw the situation as dangerously complex, fearing Trump's rhetoric would provoke wider war. The Israel-Iran conflict, rooted in decades of animosity, now threatened to draw in the entire region. Trump's insistence on a black-and-white narrative clashed with his allies' calls for restraint. The crisis became the summit's central point of contention, exposing deep strategic divides. The G7 was forced to confront not just a regional war, but the risk of global escalation. Trump's confrontational approach found no support among the other G7 leaders. His insistence on unilateral action and disregard for established alliances left him increasingly isolated at the summit. As discussions grew tense, it became clear that the rest of the group was determined to uphold the values of cooperation and collective decision-making, rather than bow to pressure from Washington. The UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan quickly coordinated a united front for de-escalation and diplomacy. These nations, along with Canada, worked behind the scenes to ensure that their message was clear. The G7 would not be swayed by threats or ultimatums. Their collaboration sent a powerful signal that the group's strength lay in its unity and shared purpose. Their final communiqué firmly opposed Iranian nuclear weapons, but stopped short of endorsing Trump's threats. Instead, the document emphasized the importance of dialogue, negotiation, and respect for international agreements. The leaders wanted to avoid further escalation in the Middle East, choosing a path of caution and responsibility over confrontation. On trade, the G7 partners rejected U.S. tariffs as violations of international rules and a threat to their economies. They voiced strong concerns about the impact of protectionism, warning that such measures could undermine global growth and stability. The group reaffirmed its commitment to a rules-based trading system, standing together against economic nationalism. Their unity prevented Trump from dividing the group, sending a message that they would not be passive in the face of American pressure. By presenting a solid front, the G7 leaders demonstrated their resolve to defend their interests and the international order, even when challenged by one of their own. The summit revealed a G6+1 dynamic, with the others more aligned with each other than with the U.S. This new reality underscored the growing rift between America and its traditional allies, highlighting the importance of solidarity among the remaining members. Their resistance was rooted in a shared commitment to multilateralism and international law. The leaders recognized that only by working together could they address the world's most pressing challenges, from security threats to economic uncertainty. Even without U.S. leadership, the G7 showed it could defend the principles of global stability. The summit became a defining moment, proving that the spirit of cooperation and respect for international norms could endure even in the face of division. Trump's tariffs struck at the heart of Canada's economy, threatening jobs and industries deeply tied to the U.S. The 50% steel and aluminum tariffs and 25% auto tariffs disrupted supply chains and raised costs on both sides of the border. The justification, border security, was widely seen as a pretext for protectionism. The USMCA offered little shield as Trump found new reasons to impose tariffs, creating constant uncertainty. Canadian businesses faced immediate pain, with factories bracing for layoffs and shutdowns. The government prepared retaliatory measures, risking a damaging trade war between close allies. Beyond economics, the tariffs eroded decades of trust and partnership. Canada was treated as an adversary, not an ally, a shift deeply resented by Canadians. The dispute was about more than trade, it was about the future of the Canada-US relationship. At the final press conference, Prime Minister Carney faced intense scrutiny over Trump's rhetoric and trade threats. Instead of criticizing the US president, Carney offered a measured, diplomatic response, sidestepping confrontation. He emphasized Canada's principles and the G7's collective commitment to diplomacy and rules-based trade. Carney's calm under pressure projected stability and reason, refusing to escalate tensions. His approach positioned Canada as a reliable, independent actor on the world stage. By standing firm yet respectful, Carney made Canada's disagreements with the US clear without resorting to divisive tactics. His quiet resolve was a powerful statement, offering a constructive model of leadership. In a turbulent moment, Carney's composure reassured both Canadians and international partners. The 2025 G7 summit will be remembered for exposing deep fractures within the Western Alliance. For the first time, no joint statement was signed, a stark symbol of division. Trump's America First approach challenged the legitimacy of the G7 and left key meetings in limbo. The summit's failure raised doubts about the G7's ability to address global challenges. The post-war liberal order championed by the G7 is now under threat from within. The era of automatic consensus is over. The G6+1 dynamic may become the new normal. The Carney summit was a wake-up call revealing fault lines that can no longer be ignored. Amid global uncertainty, Canada's principled stand at the G7 took on new significance. Prime Minister Carney's government defended multilateralism and a rules-based order, offering stability when it was most needed. Canada's refusal to bow to US pressure showed that even a middle power can assert its sovereignty. This stance helped galvanize other G7 partners and reinforced Canada's reputation as a reliable, independent voice. In a world of shifting alliances, Canada's leadership is an invaluable asset. The summit was a defining moment, affirming Canada's identity as a nation willing to stand up for cooperation and peace. In turbulent times, Canada's independent voice is not just important, it's essential for the world.